Yesterday, for the first time in its 4-decade history, the Human Rights Campaign declared a national emergency for LGBTQ plus people. HRC's state legislative director and senior counsel, Cathryn Oakley, joins us during this Pride Month to discuss this decision and what led up to it. Good morning to you, Cathryn. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start with exactly that. This is a big deal. So I wonder, what were the discussions and what factors led into this decision being made?
Well, unfortunately, we have had the most anti-LGBTQ set of state legislative sessions in history, and states across the country have passed anti-LGBTQ laws that are making many states increasingly unlivable for LGBTQ people. This is really scary for folks who live in these states, whether those folks be LGBTQ themselves, whether they are families of LGBTQ folks, whether they're parents of LGBTQ kids. And these bills particularly have targeted transgender kids, making it so that many families are considering moving out of the states that are now quite so hostile for their children to grow up.
So what does this mean, right? What do you do with this information? Because I'm sure there are many in the LGBTQ plus community who know this or perhaps feel this already. What do you do with this information?
Well, I hope that what this information does is it spurs folks beyond the LGBTQ community to really understand what's happening and to take action. I do think that many folks within the LGBTQ community are aware of these attacks because they are so personal, so scary, and so severe. But also, I think there are folks outside of our community. This is a time for people to really re-engage. If folks have felt complacent about the pace toward us getting closer to equality because of marriage equality, because of cultural change, now is a time to make sure that you're really reconnecting and standing in true active allyship. If you have questions about what it means, for example, to be a trans kid who's transitioning, now is the time to do the actual research and find out, so that you can be a really strong ally for those kids as they continue to come under attack.
There's an important point there that you're making as far as making sure that you're informed. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so making sure that you have the correct information is key. I want to ask you, just for perspective, a lot has happened when it comes to fighting for basic rights for the LGBTQ community in previous decades. How does this time compare? Because as you mentioned, we've come a long way. How are things much more challenging now versus 3-4 decades ago?
We have come a long way, and this is a community that's incredibly resilient and has overcome many major challenges, including the AIDS crisis, including efforts to try to criminalize same-sex relationships, and of course, efforts to try to prevent marriage equality. So there are lots of things that this community has been wrestling with, has been resilient, has triumphed over, or continues to work on making progress, but has been very successful thus far. And it's also really important at the same time to then say these attacks in state legislatures are truly unprecedented. We had 76 laws passed just this year across the country that are restricting the rights of LGBTQ youth, including 17 states that have just this year passed laws forbidding trans kids from getting health care that is medically necessary, best practice, age appropriate, supported by every major American medical association. And yet states are taking that away.
Cathryn, we have to wrap, but I want to make sure I ask you this. I was on your website and you all have a downloadable guide for folks to check out. Tell me quickly about that before we go.
Yeah, there's a guide for folks who need to understand better about what's happening in each state. There's a handy little chart, and there's also a lot of instructions about what to do if you're experiencing discrimination.
Okay. Hopefully people take advantage of that resource. HRC's State Legislative Director and Senior Counsel Cathryn Oakley joining us this morning. Cathryn, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.